Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm continuing my reading and review of the Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show, along with links to social media and ways to listen and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And you can support the show through Patreon. You can get the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. Or you can also check out the merchandise store and get shirts and a sling bag and a apron if you want to. Support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. Also, please check out the links to friends of the show in every episode description. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who is the co-host of the show on Saturdays whenever possible, and Michael Strange, host of Trouble Minds Radio, as well as the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP, Digital Broadcasting. And there you can hear replays of my show along with many other 24/7. A few things I want to mention here as I get this review, as I continue this reading and review of the Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. The words that I read here and the ideas and thoughts expressed are Charles Fort's, and they may not match your own or mine as we're reading here. So, also, I will. There will be things in here that sound like they're mysterious to Fort. They're unexplained. That may have been since explained in the last 100 or so years since this book came out. And of course, final thing I want to point out is I will make mistakes in the reading of this book. Not intentionally, of course, but just because words are difficult and they're hard, and there are words and names in other languages besides English in this book. So yeah, I think that takes care of all the usual things for this type of show. And let's get back into this here and see what more we can get to. He's been talking so far about other objects outside of just stones and coal and other things falling from the sky. He's been talking about objects of metal and gold found inside stone, deep in the planet, deep in the earth. So it's really been amazing so far to read about these things. Anyway, communication by Sir David Brewster. And I'm wondering if this is the report to the British Association, 1845-51, that a nail had been found in a block of stone from Kingody Quarry, North Britain. The block in which the nail was found was 9 inches thick, but as to what part of the quarry it had come from, there is no evidence, except that it could not have been from the surface. The quarry had been worked about 20 years, so that's a good ways down. It consisted of alternate layers of hard stone and a substance called till. The point of the nail, quite eaten with rust, projected into some till upon the surface of the block of stone. The rest of the nail lay upon the surface of the stone to within an inch of the head. That inch of it was embedded in the stone. Although it's cast as high, this is a thing profoundly of the damned, sort of a Brahmin as regarded by a Baptist. Religious references there. Its case was stated fairly. Brewster related all circumstances available to him, but there was no discussion at the meeting of the British Association. No explanation was offered. Nevertheless, the thing can be mollified. But the mollification that we find is as much against orthodoxy in one respect as it is against sandstone I'm sorry, as it is against, this makes sense here, our own expression. Skip the line. That inclusion in quartz or sandstone indicates antiquity, or there would have to be a revision of prevailing dogmas upon quartz and sandstone and age indicated by them, if the opposing data should be accepted. Of course, it may be contended by both the Orthodox and us heretics that the opposition is only a yarn from a newspaper. By an odd combination, we find our two lost souls that have tried to emerge, chucked back to perdition by one blow. Popular Science News, 1884-41. That, according to the Carson Appeal, there had been found in a mine quartz crystals that could have had only 15 years in which to form. That where a mill had been built, sandstone had been found when the mill was torn down that had hardened in 12 years. That in the sandstone was a piece of wood with a nail in it. Annals of Scientific Discovery, 1853-71. That at the meeting of the British Association, 1853, Sir David Brewster had announced that he had to bring before the meeting an object of so incredible a nature that nothing short of the strongest evidence was necessary to render the statement at all probable. A crystal lens had been found in the treasure house at Nineveh. In many of the temples and treasure houses of old civilizations upon this earth have been found, or have preserved things, that have fallen from the sky, or meteorites. Again, we have a Brahmin. Back to religious references here. This thing is buried alive in the heart of propriety. It is in the British Museum. Carpenter, in the microscope and its revelations, gives two drawings of it. Carpenter argues that it is impossible to accept that optical lenses had ever been made by the ancients. Never occurred to him, someone a million miles or so up in the air, looking through his telescope, lens drops out. This does not appeal to Carpenter. He says that this object must have been an ornament. According to Brewster, it was not an ornament, but a true optical lens. In that case, in ruins of an old civilization upon this earth, has been found an accursed thing that was, acceptably, not a product of any old civilization indigenous to this earth. So that's the end of that chapter there. So he's talking about things that were found that, as far as people were concerned, at the time of the book's release, could not have been made in ancient times, such as lenses. I wonder about that. I don't know enough about the history of sort of how crystal lenses are made to know if that would be possible, if they could be made hundreds or thousands of years ago without modern technology. I don't know enough about that to know for sure how that would work, but it's still an amazing idea. And again, Fort is bringing up the idea, the possibility of beings from other worlds, of aliens. Again, alien is just unknown, unfamiliar. So I love that he's bringing these things up in a time before they were really common as they are now, even just the ideas of these, of that concept. So, chapter 10. Early explorers have Florida mixed up with Newfoundland. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I apologize for that. But the confusion is worse than that still earlier. It arises from simplicity. Very early explorers think that all land westward is one land. India, awareness of other lands as well as India comes as a slow process. I do not now think of things arriving upon this earth from some special other world. That was my notion when I started to collect our data, or as a commonplace of observation. All intellection begins with the illusion of homogeneity. It's one of Spencer's data. We see how homogeneousness, homogeneousness, this is what Fort does to me every time. In all things distant, or with which we have small acquaintance. Advance from the relatively homogeneous to the relatively heterogeneous is Spencerian philosophy. Like everything else, so-called. Not that it was really Spencer's discovery, but was taken from von Baer, who in turn was continuous with preceding evolutionary speculation. Our own expression is that all things are acting to advance to the homogeneous, or are trying to localize homogeneousness. Homogeneousness is an aspect of the universal, wherein it is a state that does not merge away into something else. We regard homogeneousness as an aspect of positiveness, but it is our acceptance that infinite frustrations of attempts to positivize manifest themselves in infinite heterogeneity. So that though things try to localize homogeneousness, they end up in heterogeneity so great that it amounts to infinite dispersion or indistinguishability. I hope he doesn't use that word again for a while. Anyway. So, all concepts are little attempted positivenesses, but soon have to give in to compromise, modification, nullification, merging away into indistinguishability. Unless, here and there, in the world's history, there may have been a super dogmatist who, for only an infinitesimal of time, has been able to hold out against heterogeneity or modification or doubt or listening to reason or a loss of identity, in which case instant translation to heaven or the positive absolute. Odd thing about Spencer is that he never recognized that homogeneity, integration, and definiteness are all words for the same state, or the state that we call positiveness. What we call his mistake is in that he regarded homogeneousness as negative. I began with the notion of some one other world from which objects and substances have fallen to this earth, which had, or which to less degree has, a tutelary interest in this earth, which is now attempting to communicate with this earth, modifying because of data which will pile up later, into acceptance that some other world is not attempting, but has been for centuries, in communication with a sect, perhaps, or a secret society, or certain esoteric ones of this Earth's inhabitants. I lose a great deal of hypnotic power in not being able to concentrate attention upon some other world. As I have admitted before, I'm intelligent, as contrasted with the orthodox. I haven't the aristocratic disregard of a New York curator or an Eskimo medicine man. I have to dissipate myself in acceptance of a host of other worlds, size of the moon, some of them, one of them at least. Tremendous thing. We'll take that up later. Vast, amorphous aerial regions to which such definite words as worlds and planets seem inapplicable. And artificial constructions that I have called super constructions. One of them about the size of Brooklyn, I should say offhand. And one or more of them wheel-shaped things, a goodly number of square miles in area. I think that earlier in this book, before we liberalized into embracing everything that comes along, your indignation or indigestion would have expressed in the notion that if this were so, astronomers would have seen these other worlds and regions and vast geometric constructions. You'd have had that notion. You'd have stopped there. But the attempt to stop is saying enough to the insatiable. In cosmic punctuation, there are no periodic illusions of periods in no illusion of no periods. Illusion of periods is incomplete view of colons and semicolons. Okay, that was difficult. We can't stop with the notion that if there were such phenomena, astronomers would have seen them. I almost said astronauts. Wrong time period. Because of our experience with suppression and disregard, we suspect, before we go into the subject at all, that astronomers have seen them, that navigators and meteorologists have seen them. Individual scientists and other trained observers have seen them many times. That it is the system that has excluded data of them. As to the law of gravitation and as astronomers' formulas, remember that these formulas worked out in the time of Laplace as well as they do now. But there are hundreds of planetary bodies now known that were then not known. So a few hundred worlds more of ours won't make any difference. Laplace knew of about only 30 bodies in the solar system. About 600 I recognize now, and this is 100 years ago. You might keep in mind. What are the discoveries of geology and biology to a theologian? His formulas still work out as well as they ever did. If the law of gravitation could be stated as a real utterance, it might be a real resistance to us. But we are told only that gravitation is gravitation. Of course, to an intermediatist, nothing can be defined except in terms of itself, But even the orthodox, in what seems to me to be the innate premonitions of realness, not founded upon experience, agree that to define a thing in terms of itself is not is not real definition. It is said that by gravitation is meant the attraction of all things. Proportionately to mass and inversely as the square of the distance. Mass would mean inter-attraction, there we go, holding together final particles, if there were final particles. Then, until final particles could be discovered, only one term of this expression survives, or mass is attraction. But distance is only extent of mass, unless one holds out for absolute vacuum among planets, a position against which we could bring a host of data. But there is no possible means of expressing that gravitation as anything other than attraction. So there is nothing to resist us but such a phantom as that gravitation is the gravitation of all gravitations, proportionately to gravitation and inversely as the square of gravitation. He's making a point here. I lost my spot. That's never good. There we go. In a quasi-existence, nothing more sensible than this can be said upon any so-called subject. Perhaps there are higher approximations to ultimate sensibleness. Let me just check on the length of this next paragraph. Okay, we may get a couple sentences in, but we're not going to finish it. Nevertheless, we seem to have a feeling that with the system against us, we have a kind of resistance here. We'd have felt so formerly, at any rate. I think the Dr. Grays and Professor Hitchcocks have modified our trustfulness toward indistinguishability. As to the perfection of this system that quasi-opposes us and the infallibility of its mathematics, as if there could be real mathematics in a mode of seeming where twice two are not four, we've been told over and over of their vindication and the discovery of Neptune. Wow, there we go. That is where we're going to end it, because we're at the end of the paragraph, luckily. And so now he's getting into space. And again, this really, I think, is a good place to mention again. He's getting into things that a lot has been sort of figured out in general since these books came out. So yeah, it's still amazing to look at his ideas of those kinds of these topics at a time before anyone, as far as we know, made it out there to space. If they, again, according to some people, if they did. Anyway, thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.